A rushing child, one who causes rivers to dry up and mountains to quake with his tears. That same child whined until adulthood, angered his sister and plunges earth and heaven into darkness, and because of this is soon exiled to the world of mortals as punishment. The same punishment that leads him through the valleys and plains to the place where he is to do battle with the looming serpent, Yamata no Orochi, from which he discovers the legendary Kusanagi and makes good with that same angry sister. This is Susano'o no Mikoto. But how strong is he? Let's begin with his power, shall we? When just a child and having been born from his father's bathing, Susano'o began to mourn his mother Izanami, who was bound to Yomi, the plane of the dead. And in his mourning, the very mountains withered and all of the rivers began to dry up. And this continued until he became a man. To wipe all life from the side of a mountain, and to dry all of the rivers, while a mystical feat on a scale of an island like Japan would take mountain levels of energy. And that is just from his crying. As you can see here, this 2.4 megaton calculation simulates a single 100-kilometer river. But if all of Japan's rivers were drying, that's over 10,000 rivers drying up, increasing the yield of this feat to over 24 gigatons, firmly putting the calculation into those large mountain ranges to small island levels of power, if he could use all of that energy for an attack, of course. Mountain level scaling comes back more so with his rather swift execution of the drunk Yamata no Orochi, as it is described like this. I know Orochi was hampered. Susano'o, though, cut through him quickly, proven by the fact that the dragon, even while struck, did not stir or reply. Cutting through a creature that is as tall as 8 mountains and as long as 8 valleys would require that mountain to large mountain levels of power we were describing. If you really want to high-scale Susano'o, you can say that he and his sister Amaterasu are even in terms of power, as they can have competition with one another and it isn't one-sided, though Amaterasu is clearly the smarter of the two. And being the goddess of the sun, whose very presence causes the sun to rise and shine, as shown in the story of the Amano Iwato, Susano'o would be star level. But that is the most highball interpretation one can give to him, and more conjecture than most power scaling I like to do, even in a field of conjecture. On to durability, we don't get much for Susano'o. He's a god of the harvest and seasons and storms, but since he never had a fair fight, at least in the mythology I know of, we can't scale him more than his attack potency, so at the very least he can take as well as he can give. In terms of speed, though, that's where things get interesting. Susano'o can freely travel from Amaterasu's side to the living world of Earth, and we know that at the very least this domain is space, given that Amaterasu is a celestial deity of the sun, making Susano'o capable of matching, at the very least, escape velocity, making him hypersonic, though using the idea that Takamagahara is indeed a heavenly realm, and Susano'o walked there, he would have infinite speed, being able to travel planar distances in finite time. But let's just stick with that safe hypersonic range of speed. Susano'o is known for 2 weapons. One is the 10-span sword, or the Totsuka blade, which he used to slay Orochi, only for it to break upon the second weapon he is affiliated with. If only for a bit. The grass cutter, or Kusanagi. In later tellings, this sword could whip up a storm wind and extinguish flames that set a field ablaze. Though this still lacks in compensation to the power that Susano'o has already displayed. I just figured I'd put this in here for further clarification, and potentially a teaser for the next Myth Armory. So, where does that place Susano'o? Well, based on what we've seen in his mythology, he is somewhere in that large mountain range of power to island level, with massively hypersonic speeds and a series of weapons that allows him to hone his destructive power into swift and clean strikes. If you absolutely take his highball, and full interpretation of his domain as a god and his position in relation to Amaterasu, he is star level and bears infinite speed. So know this, no matter which interpretation you bring, that as the storm is approaching and the cold wind blows, there could be something far worse leading it.